Hi, my name is Folkert and you're watching Lutes&Dice, a channel about RPGs, mostly Dungeons & Dragons, and fantasy music of my own creation that you can easily use in your tabletop games. If any of this is interesting to you, go ahead and subscribe and turn the notifications on so you won't miss any new uploads. In this video, I want to share some DM tips on encounter building, but rather than talking about challenge ratings and combat environment, today I want to discuss some of the approaches that you can take in designing any sorts of obstacles or challenges in your stories, how to make them click with your players, and most importantly, how you can use your players in designing your game. Tiny elements like these have all the potential to make your games better, and your players want to come back and play at your table even more than they already do. The first tip is to build encounters based on player characters' abilities. It can be anything: a puzzle, a simple magical or physical obstacle on the way, a social encounter, or even a certain element of a larger combat encounter. And instead of creating a problem and presenting it to your players to come up with a solution, try taking the reverse approach. Picking a solution already at your party's disposal, spells, skills, or equipment, and designing a problem that would fit the solution. In other words, taking a key and creating a lock for it. This method is in no way supposed to be an ultimate substitution to more classical approaches, because open-ended challenges lead to all kinds of creative decisions, players coming up with the craziest stuff that you would never think of, which is a beautiful part of tabletop RPGs. But we run games for weeks, months, and years, and trying out different approaches can be really beneficial to your creative process. I'm sure everybody knows what a writer's block is. When you have a game plan for tomorrow, but you have a pumpkin porridge for a brain, you're stressed out about your work, you have zero ideas, and you're ready to text your group and cancel the game. This is when getting back on track might be as simple as flipping through the characters' sheets for a while. Okay, the fighter has a bag of goblin ears, the rogue has a crap load of gold, when did he manage? But hey, you stumble upon your cleric's prepared spell list, and an idea passes through your mind as you look at the create or destroy water spell. You visualize a dungeon chamber. Somebody steps on a tile and triggers a trap. The stone tiles all around the party are heating up, perhaps catching on fire. No doubt it will take some 30 seconds before the cleric will exclaim, "I create terrain!" This spell can do other things as well. If you read further on, it says, alternatively, you destroy fog in a 30-foot cube within range. That means we want fog in our encounter, and destroying it to bring some benefit. Perhaps it's a combat encounter. Fog is a heavily obscured area, making creatures inside of it effectively blind. What if we put creatures with blind sight against the party? Hawk horrors, swarms of bats, piercers, dark mantles. You see how we narrowed down endless options of what to put in our dungeon to just a few by simply looking into a character sheet for a minute. So first of all, this approach might help a little bit with your writer's block, but remember not being too harsh on yourself. There are real reasons to cancel games and giving yourself a little time to recuperate. No need to feel bad about that. And second, by using this method once in a while, you'll make sure that your players' decisions in character building matter. And this is not exclusively about spells. Skills and proficiencies is something you want to keep in mind as well. A rogue is proficient in sleight of hand? Well, let's make an ogre guard a prison chamber with an important NPC or a treasure vault, and the key hangs right at his side, begging to be picked. The specifics are always up to you, but the point is, I'm getting pictures in my mind just by thinking of ways to let my players shine in what they're good at. And speaking about proficiencies, I'll move on to my next tip. This one is less about designing challenges and more on the wave of letting your players feel unique. Recently, I've incorporated something in my games. Most of the time, I will allow an ability check only to a player character who is proficient with the skill. I'm not talking about trivial tasks like keeping a balance while running on a surface slope or intimidating a peasant. But trying to balance on a flying dragon while shooting a bow, or trying to coerce an intelligent politician, might require some serious preparations. In other words, proficiency. Even more fitting example skills might include something like arcana, investigation, medicine, or history. It's almost impossible, for instance, to perform a surgery relying purely upon your wide-range knowledge and luck. Or it seems unlikely to me for somebody to be able to decipher an arcane incantation just because they remember they heard a couple of wizards talking about it in a bar. Unless you're aiming for a certain degree of ridiculousness for comedy purposes, then it's fine. But keep in mind that there are other downsides to letting everyone roll anything. First of all, it might lead to situations when a barbarian who spent most of her life roaming the Icewind Dale tundra know a fact about the Netherese Empire, while a wizard who dedicated their life studying ancient civilizations rolls a 1. While again, I can see the comedy of this situation, and you can easily come up with a funny explanation to this, it still might lead to a certain amount of frustration, especially if it happens repeatedly, to the point where proficiency sort of loses its meaning, its flavor to a player. So if you like the idea of restricting certain checks, before calling for a check, you should ask yourself, does it make sense that the check will require proficiency? You can set the bar as high or as low as you want, depending on the realism of your game and the tastes of your group. Not every check has to be restricted, obviously. Another benefit to this method is getting rid of situations when players will keep rolling after a previous player has failed. When that happens, you want to say no, but it's hard to explain it to your players right away, because rolling over and over again takes away the entire purpose of a check. It effectively lowers the difficulty class, so if a party of 4 each makes a DC 15 check without modifiers, it's a 87% success, while one check is only 40%, so it's like lowering DC to 5. The general idea behind this tip is to treat proficiency as something more than just a number. Sometimes it even makes perfect sense for a proficient PC to know a certain fact or automatically succeed on a check, while a non-proficient PC would have to put some serious effort into accomplishing an identical task. Another tip for today is don't be afraid to change the solution to a certain problem mid-game. There's a famous technique, probably famous I guess, of designing puzzles with no real solution. You design half of the puzzle, like a mysterious runic engraving above a doorway or something, and you don't come up with how it works. You describe it to your players and they start discussing it, and once somebody comes up with an idea that you like, you say, yeah, congratulations, that's totally how it works. Now, I'm not talking exactly about this method, but rather about the possibility of altering what you have prepared in favor of pacing of the story and fun around the table. Especially if a player comes up with something cooler. Perhaps they assume something in-game works a certain way, or they assume a certain course of events. I would usually keep my poker face in these moments, but inside I'll be like, write that down, write that down. I've based entire adventures upon players' assumptions. This is a great source of inspiration, just listening to what your players blab about. Something along the line was, hey, can you imagine if that janitor is actually the Dark Lord? And I'm thinking to myself, well, now she is. That's an exaggeration, but I'll give you a simple example from way back from my first campaign when I was only learning DMing. So the party was navigating through a dark, ancient complex, and I didn't map it because it was supposed to be enormous. So I was describing a very creepy and long passage when somebody assumed it would end with a chasm. So I was a very new DM back then, and I thought to myself, I like that idea, and I thought to myself, oh my god, I'm gonna change something right now, mid-game, without preparing. So I'd waited a minute, and then that happened. The party almost fell down the chasm as the corridor abruptly ended. So somebody wanted to look for a lever to see if there's some sort of hidden mechanism that would help them cross the chasm, and that's it. I was taken by the wings of inspiration for the very first time. They rolled for perception, activated an invisible bridge, had a dragon fight on that bridge over an endless darkness. It was my first time, and you know what? It wasn't elegant. It was cranky and rough, but it was fun, and your players don't need to know. But depending on a person, they might even appreciate you allowing their impact on the world building. All of this might be obvious and sound easy, but when you're not that experienced, things like this might be scary. Because when you're in the middle of running a game, it can be stressful and feel like control over a game is being taken away from you. But don't be afraid to try and fail. Remember that we only grow through our failures. And other stuff, but mostly failures. I really hope it was useful. Let's have a discussion down below in the comments or on our Discord server. You can find the link in the description along with some other useful links like Patreon if you enjoyed the content and would like to support Lutes&Dice while receiving some benefits along the way. Thank you so much for watching, and we will meet again.